we have this motto.
Flexibility. Finally, we got to this site, and everyone was clearing away at the tall grass, and we had a bed sheet, or a sheet we laid on the ground and barely put up a mosquito net, and it was like midnight. Flexibility.
It felt like we were going in circles, and the grass is like 6 foot tall.
Oh, wow.
We have no idea what they're saying or why they're going around in circles.
Flexibility.
Cheriss Cruttenden and Elga Solomon are graduates of the Oklahoma Academy class of 2021. They were part of a program here called the Mission Track, which we'll talk more about in a moment. As part of that program, they spent about a year in Peru as missionaries. So Kian here, my co-host, is a part of the Mission Track. So tell us a little bit about that program.
So yeah, like Michael said, I'm currently part of the Mission Track at Oklahoma Academy, and Oklahoma Academy is a small Christian high school in Oklahoma with a mission to create missionaries. So it's a high school, just like your other high schools. It offers, math, science, all these kind of things. But in addition to that, it has a extracurricular missionary training program where students can voluntarily choose to be trained to be missionaries. And that means they're equipped with a skill set by the time they graduate Oklahoma Academy that they can then use in the mission field. And currently I'm part of the mission aviation part of the mission track, so that means I'm learning to be a student pilot. And actually our guests today are graduates of the mission aviation program. So you guys both got your pilot's licenses, private pilot licenses last summer, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then as part of the mission program, every student who voluntarily joins the program also volunteers for a year of mission service after graduating high school. So between high school and college, or whatever you're going to do else, you volunteer to go as a student missionary for a year. And so you guys actually just got back from your term as a student missionary, and you guys were at Peru Projects in Pucallpa, Peru. And just share with us a little bit about what Peru Projects is, real quick here.
So Peru Projects is a mission school that trains missionaries for about 3 months and then sends them into the jungle to serve for a year. And they also have 2 airplanes there. They have an amphibian airplane and a Cessna 182 that they use to take some of the missionaries into the jungle and take patients to the hospital.
So in the mission track, we have this motto, and share with us what our mission track motto is real quick.
Flexibility.
Right on. Yeah, you can see that here on our mission. We got our fancy mission track t-shirts on today. But flexibility. We talk a lot about this in the program all the time. Our instructor, Mr. Brooks, really likes this motto. But share with us some experiences while you guys were in Peru that really taught you guys to be flexible and the value of flexibility in missionary service.
I'd say overall, the whole thing was a lesson in flexibility. There were little stories we're going to share, but we went thinking maybe we're gonna help fix the planes, and then in like February we're gonna fly, and then that kept getting pushed aside, and then the mechanic left back to the U.S. for 2 months, and then we had to work in other places, and then the parts for the airplane wouldn't come, and then we kept finding a problem, and then we got close to fixing this other plane, and then there was a problem again, and we were so close, like 3 days from doing a test flight, and another problem. So the whole thing was a lesson because we were expecting to go and fly, because that is mission aviation program. We were gonna be student pilots and go fly in the mission field, and we ended up doing everything but flying. But then in the day-to-day things, we also found little lessons. When we got there, there was a group of students training to go out into the mission field, and so we would join them for some of those things. And one of those is a night spent in the jungle.
Yes, so one of the activities for the students was a camping trip for a night, and we decided to join them. And in my mind, I was thinking we're going to go to a nice campsite and spend the night and come back the next day.
They also said that we're going to be leaving at 7.
Right, yes, they said we'll leave at 7, and we were allowed to take a backpack with 10 items in it. And so we were like, okay, this is more like a survival camp out kind of thing, but I didn't think too much about it. And so we met at 7, everyone got in a group, and we found out they had a series of activities and a treasure hunt to get to the site.
Huh.
And later we found out the site was on base amongst like lots of tall grass and trees and everything right next to the runway. And we were walking in circles, cutting through.
Yeah, they didn't even start on the treasure hunt thing they had until like 8 or 9 o'clock. It was like already waiting for us to like get going, and they're still doing like an activity out front of the office. I'm like, why are we still here? I thought they said 7. They didn't even gather until after 7 o'clock.
And then, so we walked around, and finally we got to the site, and everyone was clearing away at the tall grass, and we had a bed sheet, or a sheet we laid on the ground, and barely put up a mosquito net, and it was like midnight by the time we got
So
to
many mosquitoes.
Wow.
Yes.
We've been walking
I
around for
bet.
like 2 hours, basically in circles, because the base doesn't have that much just jungly stuff there, because they have it cleared out for the runway. And so it felt like we were going in circles, and the grass is like 6 foot tall.
Oh,
We have
wow.
no idea what they're saying or why they're going around in circles. And then we finally get to the place that we're like, okay, this is where we're going to stay tonight. And then there's only like 3 machetes, and so those people are like hacking down stuff and moving branches, and we're just kind of standing there like, what are we supposed to do? And can we like be done? Like, how bad would it be if we just like disappeared and went back to the house? Can we do that when they notice?
right.
Because this is getting annoying.
Yeah, I think we finally fell asleep somehow and got up the next morning, and we had to make breakfast over a fire on the ground, so we had to find different steaks. And
The
actually,
activities the night before had been for extra
Right.
food, rice, bread,
Mm.
salt.
Mm.
And so that's why they'd taken so long the night before, because they wanted food.
Yeah.
But I don't know how to cook. I don't know how to make a fire.
And we actually had some activities before breakfast as well. And I asked one of the staff members, and I was like, what time are we going back? What time can we go back to the dorm? Because we could almost see the dorm from where we were. And they were like, oh, we'll be done by noon. We can go back. It's like, okay. And as the days start going on, we had little fires everywhere for breakfast, and it's getting hotter and hotter.
It was
Yeah.
very hot that day. It also rained later, so it was as humid as you can get.
Mm.
It also being sunny.
And I remember it was after breakfast. We were just sitting on the ground, and she was just relaxing from what I could see. I was trying to.
I don't know
avoid-
how you saw relaxing.
I was trying to avoid all the insects and everything,
that
and
was fine.
I was extremely hot, had mosquito bites everywhere,
Mm.
and it was just. I was very uncomfortable, and I was honestly irritated and kind of upset. I was like, oh, it's almost time. We have to go, and we're still here. And they had another activity we had to do before we could go back, and we didn't start that until 11 or 12, I think.
Mm.
And it was like I had expectations for this camping trip, and I found out that it was completely different. And honestly, I wasn't very flexible at that time.
Yeah.
And it was an interesting experience.
Mm.
But-
And so that experience, would you say it started helping you learn some flexibility then with having to become flexible for that experience?
Yes, I think after I went back to the dorm and like cooled off, showered and everything, I thought about it. I was like, you know, I could have been more flexible. I could have had a different attitude in this situation.
Yeah.
And I had to wait for another situation because I can't fix what already happened.
Right.
But,
Yeah.
Which you did get another situation to see that, because there was an opportunity for a group of people to go help with a health expo in another town, another
in a jungle village somewhere.
community. And I didn't go because they told us like half an hour before they were leaving. I was like, oh, I don't know about that. I can help folks on the plane. But she did go, and she learned that she'd helped herself because
I didn't have much information on the trip. They said we're leaving in half an hour. It's going to take us 14 hours to get there by boat, and I didn't know our staying conditions or anything, and I still had the same backpack to pack in.
Mm.
And so I was like, this time I was like, I told myself, I'm like, I'm not going to expect anything. I'm going to expect to sleep on the floor and like the boat to not have any seats or anything. And there were challenges on the trip as well in different situations, but overall it was a really nice experience because I think I had decided to have a good attitude and be flexible in whatever happened in that situation.
So despite whatever difficulties you came across in that trip, you were content in the situation and it was
Yes.
much better. What were some of those difficulties on that trip?
So number one was we got on the boat and I ate something they were selling on the boat, and I got sick, and thankfully I was sitting right next to the edge of the boat. And all the food came up, and it was like 10 o'clock at night, and it was dark, and I was sitting next to a completely random stranger. Because I had joined at the last minute, my group was all the way in the back, and I was in a lot of pain. I couldn't talk to anyone, I couldn't say anything, and then, but that was all over, and I don't, looking back, it doesn't seem as bad now.
Yeah.
And then the place we stayed at was, I have to say, it was a lot better than a lot of people's living conditions there, but it was like a tiny little room, it was moldy, there were cockroaches everywhere, and it was
No mosquito net.
no mosquito net, and but I really can't remember a lot of those difficult situations. I think like having the different mindset and attitude. Actually, I remember a lot of the positive things, like meeting all the people there. We got to do a lot of health expos and set up for that, and we actually got to eat at one of the church members' houses, and she lived in a little hut, and she had a little cute little pig as a pet, and it was just really neat. We'd walk to her
That's
house
cool.
and come back, so it was neat.
Flexibility is also sometimes about patience.
Yeah.
For me, it's just like, okay, I have to be flexible with the fact that they know Spanish, I know English, you don't know English, I don't know Spanish. So trying to communicate was also a problem, where they would be trying to ask us to do something and we're like, maybe I understand, and so, okay, yeah, I understand, I'm going to go do that, and then you end up going and doing the wrong thing. Because one day we referred to as the treasure hunt day, because it was, we ended up going all over base trying to figure out, how did it start?
So we had to go find shower curtains to put up in the boys' dorm, but we found that the boys' dorm was locked, so we had to find a key.
Yeah. So the
Yeah.
boys' dorm, and then, oh, it's locked, and so we came back to the house to ask the person who had sent us to go put up the shower curtains. And she said, oh, I don't have the key. Carlos has the key. And so we walked across base to his house, and he finally answered the door because it was lunchtime. And he's like, oh, I don't have the key. I gave it to Solange.
Our roommate back at the house.
So we're all the way back to the house. We're like, okay, so do you have the key? And she's like, oh, no, I gave it to Jimena. And so then we walk to the office. She has the key. Okay, good. Now we walk all the way back to the dorm. And we look around, and the front of the building, the back of the building, by the beds, in the bathroom. We couldn't find the curtains we were supposed to put up. So like, okay, so they're definitely not here. And so then we went back to the dorm, where she could ask Solange and Fruit, who knew where the curtains were.
We went to the house and we asked them, where are the curtains? And they said, oh, they pointed to the boys' dorm, which was behind our house, and they said, it's in the front, it's in the front. And so they were trying to speak a little English as well, and I was trying to communicate in Spanish and English, and so they were like, it's in the front. So we went back, I think, and checked around, and it wasn't there, and we came back, they're like, it's in front of our house, it's in front of the house. So I walked around the house, it wasn't there. And then eventually we figured out they meant the clothesline behind our house.
Yeah.
And somehow the communication didn't go through or something happened.
Yeah.
So we finally found them. And
So we put up the curtains, and we're like, okay, we finally figured that out. Now, we're going to go to the office. Jimena has something for us to do in the office. Thank goodness, because it's so hot today. We get to the office, and Jimena's like, oh, go down to the church and see if Gladys needs any help. I'm like, oh, man, okay. And so we go down there, and she's like, oh, yeah, I need some wood, like, this long, this wide, and it's by the water between the dorms. And we're like, okay, we learned from the shower curtain experience. We're going to make sure we know what she's talking about. So, okay, the water thing, yep, the wood, this length, this wide, between the dorms. Yep, okay, we understand what she's saying. We've confirmed it like 3 times. Okay, we're going to go find wood. So that means back up the hill, because very steep hill, very hot day, and all the way around. And we got wood, and we're like, okay, these 6 things, and we're like carrying them down the hill. And it's the wrong wood.
Oh, no.
No. So we have to carry them all the way back up. Gladys comes with us, and it's in a completely different place, which we thought, oh, by the water, she meant, oh, between the dorms. And so it was like, wrong wood, and we had figured out the wrong clues, as we called them. It was a treasure hunt day, trying to figure out what we needed to ask and how to ask it and where to go. And then halfway back down the hill with the right wood, I was called away to go work in the bakery. So we started the day not really knowing how we were going to help. And then I helped clean the dorm, and then we went and put up shower curtains, and then we went and got wood, and then I went into the bakery, and she continued helping with Gladys, and we're like, we don't know what we're going to do every day, but we have to be flexible with their ability to communicate with us and what their needs are, because we don't have any specific job we're going to do. We just are here to help with whatever they need.
Right. Yeah, you mentioned earlier before we started that sometimes it didn't feel like mission work because it was just random things, finding wood, putting up curtains, but that you realized that it was mission work. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Right. So I read a lot, and there's mission books, and it's like, okay, here's this cool story, like the plane, and they're taking this person that's about to die, and wow, they saved this person, and this many people baptized, and this person went out and he snuck across the border and he got the Bibles there, and it's like life and death, and I'm saving this person. And then the planes that were down there have done those type of things. The pilot, we talked to him, and it was like, whoa, I'm actually like meeting a person that has done this, And then I go work in the bakery. It didn't always feel like I was needed or like I was doing an important job. Sometimes I was like, okay, I'm cleaning the dorm. The dorm definitely needs cleaned. I'm washing this or doing that. But sometimes it was like, I'm supposed to work from this time to this time, and that's like 3 hours. But I only did like an hour and a half of shelling peanuts. And they aren't even using them today or even the day after. So, they didn't really need me to do that. Like, you just kind of throw in jobs at me, hoping that you'll find something that works long enough because I needed to do something today. And, now I'm cutting vegetables, and you have to, show me how to cut them because I don't understand what you're saying. And I'm just standing there cutting this vegetable and then the next vegetable and onions and carrots. And am I really helping that much? Because you could definitely do it faster than I could, and it's not really mission. You're just helping in the cafeteria, but we went to help wherever we can, and we did help whatever we could do.
Yeah. It makes me think about that, the verse that talks about the church as a body. Trying to remember what verse it is. But the church makes up the body of Christ, and there's different jobs for different people, and a lot of times I think we just think about it in terms of spiritual gifts. Can you preach? Can you prophesy? Can you, all these different things. But can you shell peanuts?
Yeah, I'm not even good at cutting.
I think that's important too, right?
Working in the cafeteria or in the bakery, we'd have to roll out bread into little buns they were making them into, and I was so slow. I do it with one hand or maybe two hands, and then you have the bakery person just doing 4 to my 1, and I'm like, am I even helping? Cutting these things, I'm taking twice as much time as you could do it. If I wasn't here, you'd be doing it and you'd still get done at basically the same time as it is with me helping. So I don't have a skill that I'm doing. It's not oh, I came to preach, oh, I came to do these missionary things. It wasn't that, and it wasn't, oh, I am helping with this and I am being really good at this. It was just, I'm doing the best that I can.
Yeah. I think I can relate to that too. Last summer I spent several months, a couple months serving God with doing Bible studies in a community in Tennessee, and a lot of the time I felt like I wasn't doing anything because I talked to hundreds of people and talked to people every day, all day long, just trying to find people who are interested in spiritual things, interested in having Bible studies, that kind of thing. And I would go days and weeks without ever finding anybody who was interested in studying the Bible or interested in furthering their relationship with Christ or anything like that. So I kind of get what you're saying, because I'm like, what am I doing here? Nothing's happening. But, I struggled with that for a long time, because I was wondering, I was like, am I doing anything to further God's kingdom by the fact that I'm just here?
Yeah. Wednesdays, we would join a lady from the church who was giving out Bible studies, and a little Spanish, so she would be able to read the verse in Spanish, but I would just be sitting there okay, I have it in English because we would print it out at the base, and so we'd print out an English one too. So I was like, okay, yeah, I can match that up. That makes sense. Yes, English to Spanish. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, they just said the answer. I think that would translate into the same thing in English. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. But I'm just like sitting there. I'm not saying anything. They might ask me to confirm, is that the answer? I'm like, hopefully they said the right answer. Yes, absolutely. Or maybe they'll ask me to read the verse in English, and they don't know what the English says. They're just listening to me say it, or not listening more often, because there was quite a bit of kids that we would go do lessons with. But I was like, I'm not really doing anything. This is kind of pointless. Like, I could be back on base in air conditioning or something, you know? Like, I'm sitting here, like, watching the kids do the lesson, and the adults read the Bible verse and write down the answers. I'm like, I have no idea what they're explaining. I can't explain it or help explain and make it an interesting lesson. I can't even read it in Spanish for them.
Right.
I'm just sitting here, like, tagging along, doing nothing. Like, does this really have a point?
Right.
Like, I'm not doing anything mission-y right now. I'm just following along.
I remember in December we had the graduation for all the students that were returning from the mission field, and a new batch were going to leave. And during the whole graduation weekend, one of the students came and asked me, they're like, do you want to be a missionary? And I didn't know what to say at first. I was like, yes, I want to be a missionary, but that's why I'm here.
Right.
And at that point, I started thinking, and I was like, mission work is not always defined by location or job. You can be of service and do mission work for God in different places. You don't have to go to the jungle to be a missionary.
Yeah.
And it's not even the job that you're doing. It's, how does we put it in the class we took, glorify God and bless others. It's like in everything you do to the best of your ability and try to glorify God. So I'm cutting up carrots, I'm cutting up potatoes and onions for a meal, so I'm going to do that the best I can so that the meal will taste good, so that those who are actually going out into the community can be well fed and do that to the best of their ability.
Yeah. And I think that's really important for us to realize, because sometimes we may think, well, I'm not really good at preaching or even cutting vegetables. I can't help with this because I'm not good at it. But I think that it's important for us to do our best, to whatever our hand finds to do it with our might, even if our might is just that much, not even very much at all. And I think that when we get to heaven, we'll find that even our efforts that we felt like had no effect, we'll find out were extremely meaningful to God's mission, even though we didn't really feel like it meant so much while we were doing it.
Yeah, and that was the conclusion I came to last summer as well, was like, it's not so much how I measure success in God's work isn't how many people I talked to today, how many baptisms happened at the end of the summer as a result of my efforts, how many Bibles I got out, or whatever. Success is following God's will and just doing what he told you to do. And if you do what he told you to do, you were successful.
Yeah.
And so, I appreciate what you guys are sharing about how you learned flexibility. And just like by means of clarification, what we're not saying is that it's wrong to have expectations, right? It's not wrong to have expectations. It's not wrong to come to God's work with this idea of how something's going to go. But where it does get wrong is that when we expect those expectations to be reality, which they can, I guess if you expect it, you expect it to be reality.
Right.
But if it turns out that it's not reality, that totally derails you. We've got to be able to be flexible and be able to follow God's leading and do his will, even if his will isn't exactly what we thought it was going to be.
The mechanic we worked at, when we mentioned to him that our motto was flexibility, 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 he said that he had someone that was training him to be a mechanic that said, flexibility is too solid, you have to be fluid. It's not just, okay, I'm going to go to be a pilot. Oh, nope, I have to be a mechanic. It's, I'm gonna go as a pilot. Oh nope, I'm gonna go work in the bakery. Like completely different. Whatever needs to be done, take any opportunity that we have, which is why he offered us the opportunity to go help with Bible studies and to teach an English class, because it's just doing what you can to help wherever, whenever, whatever.
There is,
Go ahead.
what we were talking about before about doing the best that we can, even though it's small, reminded me of a Bible verse. I don't remember where it is, but it says, "In all labor there is profit." And so whatever we do, it is making a difference.
Yeah. Yeah, and also I was thinking of the verse Paul says, I am all things to all men. And essentially what you're talking about, like, to be a worker for God, we have to be 100% willing to be whatever God wants us to be.
Wasn't one of the disciples a tent maker? And that's like what he did for a while?
Yeah, that's Paul.
It's like, I feel like I'd be like, I'm a disciple, right? Like, I'm supposed to be out and, like, teaching. I met Jesus, right? And now I'm making tents. Like, that's kind of a lame thing to do. Like, is this actually going to help? Like, I'm selling tents and getting money and, like, okay. But is this actually helping? But yes, like, if that is what God is leading you to do, that is part of his plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that kind of brings us to our key scripture for our little discussion here. And that's found in the book of Philippians chapter 4 and verses 11 through 13. And you're going to recognize these words. This is coming from the ESV. This is Paul speaking. He's that tent maker, of course. He says, "Not that I'm speaking of being in need, for I have learned in whatever situation I am to be content. I know how to be brought low, and I know how to abound. In any and every circumstance, I've learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need. I can do all things through him who strengthens me." So, share with us how you guys were able to make what this verse is talking about, your experience, how you learned to be, I think you have shared with us how you learned to be content in all things and how to be fluid and how to do what...
if not.
Sure. Right. None of us are perfect.
Yeah.
But share with us just a little bit real quick here about how these verses particularly apply to you guys' experiences.
We've actually never been hungry.
We have been in the dark, or like the Wi-Fi went out for a few days, which was electricity going down, so you don't have a fan blowing at night or AC in the office, which was annoying. But
For me, one thing that I've learned personally is to prepare myself into a mindset before the situation happens, or before the crisis or something. Prepare myself before, because during the time I'm not able all the time. So.
Have a flexible mindset
Yes.
before you have to be flexible.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's easy to think of flexibility from a purely just mental strength point of view, but I think it really comes down to much more than just mental strength. It comes down to the working of the Holy Spirit in us to be long-suffering. It's one of the fruit of the Spirit, so or
like
part of the fruit of the Spirit.
Understanding God's plan, because it is very easy to think of missionaries as baptisms and evangelism and wanting to see results. I mean, we all want to see results. Like you were talking about wishing that you brought more people to Christ and maybe gotten more lessons out and more people baptized. It's very easy to see that because we can't see the whole plan. But if we can always remember that God is seeing the whole plan, so whatever he's leading, that is going to be what we need to do. And therefore, whatever happens is what his leading is, and we can be flexible with whatever needs to happen.
Yeah. And, I've had some rather discouraging circumstances as well, which, unfortunately, a lot of those I did not have the flexibility or the patience with it. One was I had a really discouraging canvassing summer one time, and I really thought that it was kind of a waste. The whole thing was a waste. And, a lot of these discouraging situations we'll probably only find out about what happened because of it when we're in heaven. But this one I got to find out a little early. Someone I knew was actually doing a Bible study with some people where I canvassed who said that a guy by the name of Michael Shirley knocked on their door and sold them these books, and they were studying the Bible to become Adventists.
Wow. Nice.
It was amazing to see that, and I think that is actually the norm. We just don't see that happening each time, but I think God works in each scenario where we seek to do His will.
Yeah. Because God is the one planning,
Right.
and He's just asking us to join.
Yeah,
So bringing our own plans into it isn't what He was asking us to do.
right.
Yeah. So, I guess in a few words, what would your advice be to someone who's coming into the mission field? What do you think they should take away from your experience that would give them an even better and more effective service and witness for God in the mission field? In just a few words.
Willingness. By one word.
Flexibility.
Flexibility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Be willing to be flexible. And I like how you brought out, have that flexible mindset before you come into the situation, where you make flexibility your way of life, where you're willing to be led by the Holy Spirit. And if He says, nope, I want you to do this today, chop tomatoes, you're not so stuck in your method of how things have to be done, or in your expectations of how things are going to go. You're not so stuck there that you can't take a different path and do a different thing today, because that's where God's leading you.
Yeah.
Willingness to try new things or step out of your comfort zone. Because we didn't know the language, but we were still like, yeah, sure, we'll teach an English class. Find someone who knows a little bit of English and use them and us to teach a few basics for a few weeks and just try it and see what we can do. And they asked if we would do it, and we're like, okay, sure. They asked us the day before or an hour before. Can you do a special music? Yeah, sure, absolutely. We can throw something together. Just seeing where God leads.
Yeah. See where God leads and follow Him and be flexible, because it's easy for us to impose our own views on what God wants. Well, Cheriss and Elga, thank you so much for coming on the program and sharing your experience in the mission field with us. And to close out, let's all just remind our listeners of our mission motto here.
Flexibility, flexibility, flexibility.
All right, thank you.
Have a good day.
just to wrap up, let's turn to the cameras and tell our big takeaway from this segment.
Hang on.